Hello and welcome to this new module called Quadrant Productivity. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Eisenhower Matrix. And I'm first going to explain what it is, then give you some examples and finally some actions. Really simple video. So to keep it short, Dwight Eisenhower was basically a president and he was a former president. And he had quite a lot of responsibility. So you could arguably say that this man was quite productive. As you can see on the screen, he was a 5-star general responsible for the entire Allied forces during World War II, and also president of Columbia University, and supreme commander of NATO, and US president for 8 years straight. So this man does definitely know how to make his priorities. And in this video, I'm going to explain his matrix. So this basically looks like this. And there's 4 categories. The first one is urgent. The second one is not urgent. And then you also have important and not important. So the idea with this is to categorize your tasks into each of these boxes. So for example, is a task urgent and important? Then it belongs in the top left. Is a task not urgent, but it is important? Then it belongs in the top right. And I think you get the point for the ones below. So this diagram comes from James Clear, by the way. So a little shout out to him. So first you must define what is urgent. And after you're done with that, so first go through all of your tasks, define which ones are urgent, and then define which ones are important. And I want you to use the 90% rule in order to make these decisions, because what you think is important might not actually be important, or what you think is urgent might not actually be urgent. So in order to sort of remove any human component here, what you want to do is ask yourself, is this urgent? And if the answer is 90% yes, only then, or above, of course, if it's 100% completely fine, then you want to categorize it as urgent. So if it's 80% urgent, you should not classify it as urgent. Same goes for important. Just say if it's like 90% important, then you can classify it as important. If it's anything below, don't classify it as important. So you kind of want to prioritize the tasks which are urgent and important, which I'm sure you guessed. Delegate the tasks which are urgent but not important. Schedule the tasks that are urgent but important. And eliminate tasks that are not urgent and not important. So I'm going to give you some examples. Let's say that you're a creator. A couple of tasks which you might have, and funnily enough, I chose myself as the example, is creating content, networking or engaging, fixing a product issue, doing research, and this can be for an article, and doing client work. So how I would go about doing this is first looking at the Eisenhower Matrix, defining which of these tasks are going to be urgent or not. So I've defined them like this. The only one which is, actually urgent would be, in my opinion, fixing a product issue. Because if you create content and you miss a day, it doesn't really matter. If you network, but you don't network for a day, it's not going to completely kill your business. If a product issue is so important that if it isn't fixed, your clients leave, then it's a pretty urgent issue. Our research is the same story, and client work I don't classify as urgent. Reason for that is because if something which you have to do for a client is not urgent, so if it's just like general client work, you wouldn't need to classify that as urgent. Then we're going to look at which of these tasks are important. So I would say that most of them are important. So I just labeled all of them. And now comes the part where we're going to actually prioritize them. Because if we see that the task which you have to do right now is going to be the one which is urgent and important, then we're going to look at the ones which are not urgent but important. And that's pretty much the rest. So this is sort of how I would go about defining what I would do first and what I would schedule next. And you're very free to also classify or like prioritize the other tasks in the same way. So for example, if you think that creating content is more important or more urgent than networking, feel free to schedule that first. So it's not like a binary thing. It doesn't have to be important or not important. It's how important. That's kind of like the mindset shift I want you to make. And then I also have an example if you're a coach or consultant. I used to be one. So some of your tasks might include doing outreach, building products, doing sales calls, setting up a website, or handling unhappy clients, which I don't know if you have experience with this, but if you have, you probably know it's a hassle. So that could be one of the tasks. Now we're going to look at the matrix again, and we're going to define the tasks as urgent or not urgent. And in my opinion, I think the only 2 things which are really important is doing sales calls and unhappy clients. Unhappy clients speak for itself. You don't want unhappy clients, but doing sales calls I think is extremely important as well as urgent, because if you don't continuously make sales, your business is doomed to fail. If you can name one single company that doesn't continuously make sales and is successful, then I would challenge you to do so. Simply said, that's how I would categorize them. And when we look at the important side, we would define that only the setting up of the website is not important. You might argue that it is, but if I ask you, let's say that you have a really good offer and you speak to someone who's already familiar with you, so you've built some rapport, is a website really going to be the needle mover or like pull the trigger for them in order to make the decision to work with you? And keep in mind that you're a coach or consultant. I think it doesn't. And I've also experienced this because I ran my consulting business for about, I would say almost a year without any sort of website, without any sort of online presence, which wasn't very smart now that I'm looking back at it. But I was just a bit against using social media. But simply said, you don't need a website to actually grow a business. Like, it's not as important as you'd think. And I do think the rest of the things are way more important if you compare them. And that leaves us with the prioritization, because I think that the ones which should be scheduled are unhappy client support and doing sales calls. And as I just previously said, it's not a binary thing. So for example, I think if you have an unhappy client, that should be a priority. So make sure you do that before the sales calls, and the rest follows. Now, there's also a resource sheet below called Quadrant Productivity, where you can basically just fill out all of these things and have an overview of everything that I just explained. Make sure you go through this, because it's enough for you to just watch this video and continue to the next. But if you take action, you're really going to see the results from it massively. So it's going to be down below. Download it, apply it, and see some results.